Good to have you here on this Tuesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. So much to get to here on the show. Home team, Brandon Leak will join us coming up in hour number 2. Also, we're looking for a big year out of Nolan Smith there at the University of Georgia, former number 1 recruit in 2019. We'll look at that. Also, Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, will join us, and we'll talk with Zach Miles. He is now with the U.S. Speed Skating Communications Coordinator. We've also worked with the Olympics and the Paralympic Museum. Of course, the Summer Olympics coming up in about a month. And we'll just talk about what are some of the sports we should be looking at and how long what all goes into becoming an Olympian to represent Team USA. So he'll join us coming up here in just a little bit. It's a little something different here on a Tuesday afternoon for you as well. But guys, tonight, another big night in the state of Georgia. Why? You have the Hawks Game 4, a must-win for Atlanta, and you have the Braves, I don't know, must-win, but pretty darn close as they open up a 3-game series with the Mets. You'll see DeGrom on Thursday, so probably got to get these first 2. Big night tonight in the state of Georgia with those 2 things happening.
Well, and I think we're all waiting to see how healthy Trae Young is, what he's able to do, if he's able to go. I think there's kind of an element of the unknown, at least in terms of what we've seen. Potentially some reports that maybe earlier today he was looking good for whatever that's worth, going through warm-ups, but no way to know what to expect, no way to know what to know. Nothing would surprise me at this point. I mean, how you deal with a foot injury, a bone bruise on very limited rest in the NBA playoffs. I mean, I don't know how you do that. I don't really have any expectations tonight. I don't want to sit here and say, well, I think Trae should go 15, 20 minutes. He's got to score 15, 20, 30 points. I have no idea. We don't know what is even physically possible. We don't know what the internal expectations are. But I do know this, Ben, and something you talked about yesterday on the show, you're going to have to get scoring from other guys on the roster. And even if Trae's able to go, he's not going to be 100%, obviously. So I think you look around the roster, looking at John Collins, who's been a superstar. You're looking at Bogdanovich, who had a bad night a couple of nights ago. You're looking at Lou Williams. You're looking at Kevin Huerter. You're looking at other guys, Clint Capella, Danilo Gallinari, to help shoulder the burden of scoring. And if Trae goes tonight, everybody's going to be rooting for him, but what is he capable of handling load-wise on that foot? You're going to have to get some scoring from guys early and often tonight, not named Trae Young.
Yeah, BJ, and that's what kind of scares me. When you look at this Hawks team and the way they constructed, they're used to playing more of like a Robin role as a group, and collectively, not individually. I think Gallinari and Bogdanovich are 2 guys that can definitely get it done, but I think it's going to have to be by committee. I think if you ask one guy to go out there and play just that full Robin role by himself, I think that's outside of what that person can do. You mentioned Bogdanovich, you mentioned Gallinari. Those guys can have spurts, which I do think Bogdanovich probably has been more hurt than he's put on, BJ, when you look at his impact or lack thereof and what we've grown to know him to be. But you gotta pick Trae. If Trae plays tonight, it's because of the magnitude of the situation. It's because he don't want to let his team down. And I just think that momentum only goes so far. That beginning of a game, you jump around, the adrenaline is going. Maybe you took a shot or something so to kind of like ease the pain. But and when people saying, I know it was Ports Kevin, something told us before the show, one of his teammates like he looked good and shoot around, or a reporter. You're not going full going practice. You're not going as hard as you could go in the game. The game is going to force everything you have out of you. And for that reason, I know we talked about, on yesterday's show, like if he decided to sit out, I don't see him sitting out. I see him trying to gut it out. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, not just for Trae, but for the team, because he could potentially make, a bad situation worse. I trust that Trae Young understands his body, that the trainers have his best interest in mind, which is kind of scary to me as well. If they do it by committee, if Gallinari, as well as Collins, as well as, Capella, as well as Bogdanovich, as well as Huerter, if those guys can do it collectively, they got a shot to be in tonight's game, because Trae's not going to be 100%. I know that the Bucks are going to try to send more bodies at him, try to, kind of beat him up a little bit the way the Knicks tried to do. And it's one thing to come in hurt and no one knows what's hurt on you. It's another thing to come in hurt and the whole world knows you're dealing with a foot injury that's probably only going to get worse as the game goes on. But I still got faith in this Hawks team. Going to learn a lot about the role players tonight. Going to learn a lot about this Hawks team. But Kevin, it seems as though, man, can the Braves and the Hawks win on the same night? It seems like every time they play on the same night, they can never go 2-0. Let's get a 2-0 tonight. One, because, Kevin, I do think this is a must-win for the Braves team because of momentum, and this is a team they're chasing in that division to try to keep pace pre-All-Star game. And, we count, because with the Braves, the same way, Trae Young, we count healthy bodies with the Braves as well. I mean, I know that Mike Soroka situation, news is still hitting home when it comes to a Braves team that you still trying to scratch a claw to put a starting lineup together for the pitching staff. But, yeah, try to get 2-0 for the first time, I think, this season for the Braves and the Hawks.
Yeah, I think, again, if you're Atlanta, I think your eggs are in the Game 4 basket, right, BJ? You look at this one tonight, and even with Trae Young, if you don't win, you're down 3-1, and you're really up against it. You're really up against it at that point to have to win 3 in a row to move on to the next round. I think this is your moment tonight where Trae Young's got to gut it out and go. I know he looked good and shoot around and walk around, but that's, again, not the same intensity as the game. But you go down 3-1, that's tough to come back from in a lot of scenarios. And not to say that it can happen, but there's a reason that it's so difficult and it's so special is that it doesn't happen often. So it would take a really historic effort from Atlanta to get that done if they can't finish tonight. And again, they were with the Bucks pretty much the entirety of Game 3, and it got away from them late. They were winning early, really riding the momentum. Milwaukee came back, traded blows, and then last handful of 5-6 minutes or so kind of started slipping away from them, and it was over. I think you got to figure out a way to get to that moment again tonight where the last couple of minutes maybe you have a 3 or 4 point lead, and you just have to gut one out and even this series back up.
Yeah, I think it's a must win. I agree with you guys because if you lose, like you said, Kevin, you then would have to win 3 in a row against Milwaukee, and 2 of those games would be on the road, and you would have to do that with Trae Young probably not being at 100%. That would be really difficult aside from the odds that would already be there of just winning 3 in a row, 2 on the road, and then without your star player being at his best potentially. But look, it's got to start on the defensive end. It's got to start in the paint. We've talked about how impressive it was that Atlanta was able to out-rebound Milwaukee in Game 1. I don't know that you have to out-rebound Milwaukee, but there's got to be more of a competitive balance than there was the last 2 games. And back in Game 1, if you remember, John Collins and Clint Capella combined for 34 rebounds. And both of those guys are elite. John Collins has been an all-star. Clint Capella led the league in rebounding during the regular season. And in terms of your activity, in terms of your shot altering, shot blocking, all of that stuff matters. And it's really tough, the challenge against Milwaukee, because their front court is great, is very talented. They're deep. So it's a major test. But I think if you're Atlanta, obviously it all starts and ends with Trae. We know that. And we're all waiting. All of us are waiting to see what Trae Young can do tonight, if he can go, how close he'll be to his normal self, what his workload can be. But after that, you need to be a little more competitive in the paint, be a little more effective on the glass, be a little more effective at disrupting shots. And I think Atlanta can do that tonight. And if they do, you have a good chance to be in this game late.
Yeah, and unforeseen circumstances happen in sports. And when you start talking about what did you do in this Eastern Conference Finals to potentially prepare your team, that's what I know that certain players are motivated by different things. To me, I was always motivated by the fear of letting my teammates down. Look, I don't got to be the reason why we win. I will not be the reason why we lose, though. I couldn't live with that. So, Kevin and BJ, I keep coming back to maybe they need to get back to basics. If Clint Capella and Collins aren't rebounding the basketball, they are being ineffective at what they do. Any points that Collins and Clint Capella can give you is a bonus because they're being active. They always say being active on the defensive end creates opportunities on the offensive end. And if they're not doing that, they're going to have to – and bigger than just combining for almost 40 rebounds, BJ, how many of those could be, offensive rebounds, which is the hardest thing to do, I think, in basketball. An offensive rebound is almost – insurmountable when you look at how not often it doesn't happen when you look at basketball. But I do think tonight these guys are going to have to play outside of themselves. I mean, we've all been called upon to do things that we don't do from now on again. You're a professional basketball player. We're not asking Gallinari to be Steph. We're not asking, Clint Capella to be Ben Wallace. We're not asking Collins to be Ben Wallace. But you guys are going to have to do something because the box score should look a little different. Like Kevin and BJ, we should look and say, man, Clint Capella had, 25? Collins had 20. Because they're going to have to because just like I know, BJ, Atlanta's not winning 3 in a row against no Bucks. That is hard to do in basketball. I've seen it done twice. And the guys that did it, one name was Kobe and the other name was LeBron. Well, I don't see those guys on the Hawks. So for me, get a dub tonight, and who knows what type of momentum they can kind of spur, in Game 5.
Yeah, we'll see what the Hawks bring to the table tonight. As you said, BJ, also big games for the Braves. No DeGrom till Thursday. You don't see Stroman this series either, so a chance to try to pull a little closer. You're 4.5 out, which is not that bad, obviously. It's well within striking distance if you're the Braves, but you have to take advantage of these opportunities. 2 of 3 means you're 3.5 out in the NL East, and you call that a win, in my opinion. So got to win these first 2. I think there's a lot of pressure there, and try to move the needle a little bit at the time because this is a Braves team that, again, a far cry from what you had on opening day and what you expected them to be just in terms of the regular lineup at this point. And you need Charlie Morton to be huge.
These games are massive against the Mets. And I know for basically the entire season, we've been saying it's early. Well, it's not anymore. And you're to the point where these games are very significant in the standings. You mentioned Braves been getting a little bit of help the last couple of nights. The Mets only ahead 4.5. Well, each win against the Mets is kind of doubly significant, and each loss is as well. So, I mean, if you get swept, for example, I don't want to talk that into existence, but if you do, you're in a very difficult spot. Whereas if you're able to win 2 of 3, like you said, Kevin, you've trimmed it down. You have some momentum. Charlie Morton's been fantastic the last couple of times out. His last 2 starts, 14 2/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 0 runs, 18 Ks. You wonder how long he can keep that up, but he's been great. And I think you look at him tonight and say, hey, man, you're a veteran. You've been an all-star, I believe a multiple-time all-star. We brought you to Atlanta to win games like this. We didn't necessarily bring you to Atlanta, to have a great showing against the Marlins. We need you against the Mets and now the Nationals. And I think you look at Charlie Morton to set the tone, but you also got to score runs. And you mentioned Thursday. If we're being honest, you're probably not scoring a whole lot of runs on Thursday unless they come late because DeGrom's out there. So tonight's important. Tomorrow's important. If you can get those 2 games, that would be a real boost. But as of right now, guys, Atlanta has 11 games left with the Mets all year. You have 11 more opportunities. And who knows what the standings are going to look like in 6 weeks, in a month and a half. But right now, New York is the standard in the National League East, and you've got to have success in these series.
Yeah, well, Charlie Morton's kind of going with the norm, right, Kevin? I mean, 3 years ago, it was supposed to be Mike Folnavich, ended up being Mike Soroka. Then, it's going to be Mike Soroka. Then it's going to be Max Fried. Then it's going to be Max Fried. Then it's Ian Anderson. I mean, it's almost like, listen, don't talk about the Braves or who's going to be the ace before the beginning of the year because it don't go well. Oh, and that was before 7 straight years of opening day being Julio Teheran. It's just, look, thank God for this farm system being able to find guys in free agency. Charlie, go out there and do what you do. And whoever got to start against DeGrom, maybe Kevin, that's when Kevin Thomas should make his debut with the Braves because it doesn't matter who it is against DeGrom, right? I mean, DeGrom just don't even give up hits, but I like what Charlie's showing thus far.
It's Drew Smiley, unfortunately. Drew there on Thursday. We've got more to come. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. We'll hear from Zach Miles, formerly of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum, also now with the U.S. Speed Skating Communications Coordinator with the Summer Olympics coming up. What do we expect? How's the training process go for these athletes that you see qualifying for the Olympic team? How for the process for these trials and, to get on the final U.S. team? We'll talk to him about that. Should be a very interesting chat with him coming up just a little bit. Home team Brandon Leak coming up in the top of hour number 2. We'll talk about Trae Young and game 4 coming up tonight there in Atlanta. But obviously we're talking college football every day here on the show, BJ and Ben. And one thing that determines a lot in college football, BJ, and you said a lot, it's not just how good you are, but who you play. And sometimes you could be a good team with a tough schedule. And according to PFF, the team with the hardest road to hoe right now would be Arkansas in the SEC. The team with the easiest schedule out there would be your Chanticleers from Coastal Carolina here in 2021.
Yeah, and Arkansas's got a lot of work to do. You open up with Rice, and then in consecutive weeks you have Texas, Georgia Southern, and obviously that's going to be a challenge. Texas A&M, at Georgia, at Ole Miss, Auburn. You have Arkansas Pine Bluff, Mississippi State, at LSU, and at Alabama in consecutive weeks. And then Missouri. Ben, I know you did the SEC thing, man. And look, when you're in the SEC, you understand that every week's going to be a challenge, but that is really something for Arkansas.
So let me get this straight. Sam Pittman, first time ever becoming a head coach. The first team he gets to play is Georgia. They just threw something in the hat last year. He get to play Georgia this year. For him having, I guess, a successful season in the all-SEC schedule, he gets the hardest schedule in college football. So when people ask, man, why is it hard to make it in Arkansas? Well, we got the talent, we got the scheme, we got the coaches. Look who we have to play. And BJ, I look at Coastal Carolina, like when you start thinking about, are these odds makers or are these, schedule makers looking out for these teams, trying to let them know that, look, we trying to reward you guys, and we understand that maybe, the Sun Belt is not an easy schedule. So it'll be 130. They're not factoring in the Sun Belt itself. I mean, you got Louisiana, you got App State, you got Georgia Southern. Who knows how good Troy or Georgia State going to be this year. But I find it to be quite interesting. A team that had one of the best seasons ever in the Sun Belt gets the easiest schedule. And a team that's always scratching and clawing to get to 6 wins. Nobody's ever thinking Arkansas going to win the West. Nope, that's not. To get to 6 wins, I get the hardest schedule. Well, BJ, I guess they're saying a quality loss is about as good as a good win. They're gonna have a bunch of quality losses this year. But yeah, Sam Pittman, man, he got an uphill battle. I just find it to be crazy that they should just Arkansas, who y'all want to play out of conference? Because y'all got the Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, Auburn. I think their crossover. I think their crossover is Georgia, or it's Missouri. I think so. They ain't giving these guys no favors right now. But yeah, these schedules have a lot to do. I saw that Alabama and Georgia, theirs ain't too crazy. They try to make it look like they're not trying to make this thing look rigged. But yeah, these schedule makers, man, they can do a better job of trying to give these bottom feeders some type of help.
Well, the problem with some of this stuff is you make it so far out that you don't have any clue as to how good some of these teams are going to be. And I know Arkansas started back up the annual Texas Showdown there where they play it in Jerry World, I believe, BJ and Ben. So it's, Texas has been down, but if they come back up, that adds a little bit more, stress to your schedule, so to speak. But yeah, Sam Pittman's got to be the last 2 years looking around going, I know I wasn't here, fellas, but who thought this was going to be a good idea to get all this going on the schedule, knowing who's rotating on and off. So yeah, Arkansas, very tough. I think for, you look at some of the contenders, BJ and Ben, just say, well, if Arkansas is the toughest and Coastal Carolina's 130, who are some of the other contenders? Georgia's still sitting at 20 in terms of strength of schedule. Bama sitting at 24. And I think if you're going to look at those two and say, well, this and that, I think the strength of schedule still falls pretty nicely in their favor if you're a top 25 in terms of strength of schedule. Clemson, on the other hand, is way back at 64. BJ, I think that's why a lot of people are putting stock in that Georgia game and how they perform there. Cincinnati, who people are saying, could they be a dark horse for the 4th spot in the playoff? They're 73 on strength of schedule. And then you have a team like Liberty, who was all the rage last year as well, way back at 100 and 20th. But I think the big takeaway there is you see Georgia and Alabama, top 25 strength of schedule. Clemson way back at 64. Much more stress on them to absolutely go out and win every single time out.
Yeah, there's a big difference, at least on paper, when we look at those schedules and compare them, right, with where Georgia and Alabama are. And we're talking about the regular season and where Clemson is. But the the Georgia Clemson game obviously is going to shape the early narrative for the college football season. But I did want to kind of point out that one of the teams that deserves, I guess, some props. I mean, I don't know if you want to be high or low on this list. Normally when you're high on a ranking, it's awesome. You're proud of it. Oh, we have the third best collection of running backs in the country. Well, I don't know that you want to be high on the strength of schedule list, but Georgia Tech, Cody sent a message in the chat, I believe, saying he thinks Georgia Tech has the hardest schedule in the country, and it's definitely up there. Absolutely. Just to pick out a few matchups here for the Yellow Jackets, you have at Clemson, North Carolina, Pitt, Virginia Tech, at Miami, at Notre Dame, and Georgia. And that's not even talking about, the full schedule, some of the other challenges. I think you also have Boston College in there, who's projected to be an 8-9 win team. I think Georgia, Alabama, about where you want to be. You kind of want to be in the 20s. To me, when I look at Georgia Tech, I see a schedule that's top 5. That is one of the 5 hardest schedules in all of college football. And granted, with that comes opportunity. If you're Jeff Collins and you're a young program and you beat a Notre Dame or you beat a Georgia or you beat a North Carolina, that's a game changer. That's a national headline, national statement type win. But if you're just kind of being realistic, looking at it from afar, there are some really difficult matchups where Georgia Tech is probably going to be a double-digit underdog. And I think you could see a scenario. I know coaches say this sometimes, like, hey, we're a better team, but our record doesn't reflect that. I could see at least elements of that possibly being true with this Georgia Tech schedule.
Yeah, and I mean these obviously these schedules, these strength schedules are putting in perspective just how steep of a hill to climb for some of these teams. Look at a guy like Jeff Collins, for which bringing back a Georgia Tech team that had 2 of their core positions be true freshmen last year. And I think that when you start talking about it, be just some of the best. I mean, some of the best quarterbacks in the country. Is on the schedule for the Georgia Tech team, who gets Georgia at the end of the year. So Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, it's going to be rough. But I will say that when you look at, we talk about this, so you look at the 6-win threshold in college football, that is prestigious. It is not easy to win 6 games. If Georgia Tech wins 6 games, Coach Collins is going to be up for Coach of the Year. When you look at this schedule, so I just think that, obviously they're going to put the teams like the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world. But Coach Collins, man, good luck. It's not going to be easy. We're going to throw the Clemson game out. But Coach Collins, if you need some motivation, go to last year when North Carolina played Florida State. North Carolina beat Florida State. You just got to make sure you get up by like 30 and make sure it take the whole game for them to catch up. But it can happen.
Yeah, my schedule's tougher than your schedule. That's certainly what fans like to say when it gets down to late November and in December. You played nobody, we played everybody. That's the going line when you get there late in the season. We'll come back. Much more to come. We'll switch gears something a little different. Zach Miles is going to join us with the formerly of the U.S. Olympic Paralympic Museum. The Olympics are coming up in a month. They're in Japan. He'll join us next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out on this Tuesday. Glad you're with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. The Summer Olympics coming up in about a month, right around the corner. You're seeing athletes qualify to make the U.S. team all over the place the last couple of days. And joining us here, formerly of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum, now he's the communications coordinator with U.S. Speed Skating. Zach Miles joins us here on 3 and Out. Zach, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on. Explain how this works for most of the athletes. I think we see Olympic teams come together, and I guess in the back of our mind, we kind of think like the U.S. men's dream team for basketball, where it's like, hey, we just pick 12 guys, and that's going to be the team. How does it work for most of the athletes making this team, though?
Yeah, for sure. I can speak for speed skating, which will be coming up actually in December and January. We have our short track coming up in December and our long track happening in January. But for a lot of them, I mean, they're training 3.5 years just for one race, basically. You know, we have World Cups, World Championships happening throughout the year. We're in our off season right now, so not much happening where I'm at right now in Salt Lake City. But once we come up, these athletes, men and women both, are competing for one race. They have their first round, and then they go into their final rounds. And usually, you've probably been seeing the track and field right now. They have Heat 1, Heat 2 for the pre-rounds, the prelims, and then they go into the finals. And they usually take the top 3. So for right now, a lot of the different sports like swimming and diving, track and field, if they have one bad race or one bad heat, or for us speed skaters, one bad race around the rink, which could be 500 meters, so a little over a lap. I mean, that one bad race could cost you a trip to Tokyo or Beijing.
And of course, once every 4 years, when does the training start in terms of, okay, my goal is the Olympics. I understand what milestones I have to reach. When does the training start? And I mean, I'm sure it's incredible. How intense is that training?
Yeah, for sure. I have the privilege and honor of actually getting to work at the Utah Olympic Oval, which is where our athletes who are part of the national team for both short track and long track train. And I mean, these men and women have been training since they were 8, 9 years old, but the training begins as soon as that Olympics ends. So we have our February Olympics coming up in 2022, and that training for the next Olympics, the Paralympics, will start just a few months later after that. We have a combination of stuff that we do in-house on ice, a lot of relay races and training from that, and then also a lot of our dryland exercises. So every day, I mean, the athletes get there at 7, 8 a.m. in the morning, and they're there till 4:35 in the afternoon, and then going home and doing more dryland exercises and back at it the next morning. And even now, when it's their quote-unquote off-season, they're still putting in the time, effort, and energy to make sure their bodies are in top shape and top performance.
And Zach, I mean, when I think about the Olympics, obviously, I mean, huge fan of all the Olympic games, definitely the track and field, but the Paralympics, the one thing that always stood out to me was, the classifications. As far as like, what they as far as like how they classify these guys, and then the fact that they got to make sure that you fall within those classifications as far as like the competition.
Yeah, for sure. You're breaking up a little bit. I didn't get to catch all that, but I did hear about the Paralympics. And definitely, I think the Paralympics is a special time. It's a special place for a lot of our athletes. And my time at the USOPM, the United States Olympic and Paralympic Museum, really kind of opened my eyes up to a lot of the Paralympic movement. And right now, we're doing our hashtag Show the World campaign through the Paralympics and trying to make sure that, we bring attention to the stage about what the Paralympics are and what the Paralympics are all about. I think a lot of times, a lot of the focus is only focused on the big name athletes, like, I'm sure or Michael Phelps, Apollo Ono, Lindsey Vonn, and our big time USA athletes who are great Olympians and deserve all the honor and accolades that they get. But our Paralympics, the amount of coverage is just so sad to see the disparity between the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games. So this year we're trying to make it a very concerted effort to make sure that the Paralympics get just as much coverage and just as much attention as the Olympic Games. And I think the good thing for like U.S. speed skating is we don't have Paralympic athletes, but we're still trying to make sure that we are promoting Paralympics from our social media platforms and different initiatives we're trying to take.
I was going to say, Zach, from your time working with the Paralympic Museum, what can you tell us about it? Because it happens right after the Olympics, immediately goes into that. Tell folks who aren't familiar with that what the Paralympics are.
Yeah, for sure. And you're asking about the museum, correct?
Yeah. Just for folks that don't know what the Paralympics are, what exactly they are.
Yeah, for sure. No, the Paralympics are for any athlete that might have any type of disability, whether that is any type of a intellectual disability or a physical disability or anything that's kind of preventing them from putting them at any type of a disadvantage from any of the other athletes that might be competing. And I think something cool about Paralympic athletes is that they don't like to be referred to anybody with a disability. They like to be looked at and seen as athletes. They're competing and training just as hard as other athletes are, who are able-bodied athletes. And I think that's something that really separates the mentality of Paralympians and Olympians, is that they view themselves as equal. They don't see themselves as having to overcome another obstacle or hurdle.
What was it like for you learning about some of the athletes, learning about the stories, learning about the history with the Olympics and the Paralympics, working at the museums and kind of getting closer to the process and the people that way?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think for me, it was a lot of learning. I worked there during last summer, so it was during COVID-19, so I had to work remote, so I didn't get the opportunity to actually go and experience the museum, but it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of understanding the vocabulary, understanding, you might feel you're telling someone's story to the full potential and you're, telling every single bit about them, but there's a whole nother layer besides them as an athlete, and that was one of the most rewarding experiences from that internship. Was I got to do a story about Paralympian Ron Stein, who competed in the 60s, and he has unfortunately passed away, but I got the opportunity to talk to a lot of his different family members, people in his community and hometown, and just to learn the type of impact that he had on his small town in Illinois. He wasn't the biggest name, he wasn't the flashiest name, but he won 8 medals at the Paralympic Games, and the entire town, the entire city in Illinois just honors him, commemorates him. He's in his local hometown museum that they have, and just getting to hear from family members and athletes themselves and talk about what the Olympic Games and Team USA really meant to them. It's truly impactful, empowering, and truly inspiring just to hear how excited and fond they are of the Olympic Games, the Olympic movement, and just continuing to reflect on that.
And Zach, when you think about it, when you think about the Olympics, I mean, you talked about how when the training starts and how these Olympians are, always, always have an incredible mentality. But you're talking about a very, very select group of people. To say I want a gold medal or a silver medal or a bronze medal, they're giving out the same amounts as far as like those 3 places. Just talk about how prestigious that is to be able to say, look, not only am I an Olympian that represented, my country, I'm a medaler. I was a gold, silver, or bronze medalist.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think a very common misconception, like you mentioned, the gold, silver, bronze, everything like that. I think everyone's goal is obviously to go to the Olympics or Paralympics and try to win a gold, obviously. But I think first of all, the first honor and the first prestige is just saying that you're an Olympic athlete. A lot of these I train at the U.S. Speed Skating Olympic Oval here in Salt Lake City. A lot of them are just national team members who got invited to train, and they're in our training program and going through our workouts, weight facilities, things like that. And I think a lot of the times, that's an honor in itself, making the national team, 1. And then 2, some of these people who are training right now are younger than I am. They're 17, 18 years old, and they understand, like, now's not my time to make an Olympic Games, but I'll be there in 4 years or 8 years or something like that. And just getting to that prestige and trying to go with that mentality of, I'm on the national team, and that still means something. And then obviously, if you are someone that gets picked as one of the 3 athletes for an event to get to go to the Olympic Games or something like that, that is a level of accomplishment and a level that they've been trying to attain since they could put on skates at 4 or 5 years old. And I don't think people understand that you've been working for some of these athletes for 20 plus years of their life just to get to that one level. And whether you medal or not, even if it is just a bronze medal, like, that is still accomplishment, especially when you're competing against not only the best athletes in the U.S., but best athletes around the world.
Zach, once the Olympians arrive on site, what's the schedule like? I mean, you mentioned a moment ago that you're preparing years, if not, 10, 15 years for kind of 1 or 2 events or one showcase opportunity. What are the schedules like once they're at the Olympics leading up to their event?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously we talked about kind of what's going on right now with their training and stuff like that. But once we get out to Beijing in February, you know, they wake up early in the morning, and the first thing that they kind of have to overcome is just the time change. Obviously, we're on the other side of the world, and just trying to get used to that time change and getting their bodies adjusted to the different times and schedules that they're on and stuff like that. And once they get out there, you know, they have a few practice sessions, some that are open to the public, some that are more private and not open to the public and media. But once they're out there training every once in a while, they're also, you know, having interviews with NBC, interviews with ESPN, interviews with different media outlets, and making sure that they're, you know, promoting themselves, promoting our sponsors at Team USA, their own personal sponsors, stuff like that. And then also just trying to get in that mentality and headspace of like, we're going to go out here and compete. Obviously, you know, the week leading up to the games, when they have those practice sessions, it helps calm their nerves a little bit. But then once after those opening ceremonies hit, and they have to go to the opening ceremonies and represent Team USA on the opening ceremonies, right after that, they have to make sure that they are in the zone and the nerves definitely start hitting. And then that's when the media attention starts coming too. So they have that added pressure as well. For some of our younger athletes, this is the first time they've ever talked to major news outlets, major sports networks, and stuff like that. So just trying to prepare them for that and make sure that they're good to go that way. A lot of the obstacle is them trying to make sure that they're prepared and able to represent themselves and Team USA in a good light, in a good way.
Zach Miles joining us here on Three and Out. Zach, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
No, thank you so much for having me, guys, and have a great rest of your day.
Will do. And the Olympics coming up this summer, another month until it gets here. And again, he is formerly with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum. He's now with the U.S. Speed Skating Communications Coordinator. We appreciate him coming on. But yeah, the Olympics coming up in just a couple of weeks. And as he said, you're seeing the track and field events and teams kind of come together here over the last handful of days. We're seeing men and women make the United States national team to go compete in Tokyo here in a month or so. We've got more to come. It's Three and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, also live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. Coming up top of next hour, we'll have Home Team, Brandon Leak, 6A The Fan, co-host of Home Team and Hamilton Show. We'll get the very latest with Trae Young for Game 4 tonight. Obviously, seems like a do-or-die moment for the Hawks here in this series, not to go down 3-1.
You need it. The spotlight's on, the pressure's on, and I think, again, we're all kind of on Trae Young watch in terms of what he's able to do, how much he's able to give. And I don't think we'll even know, Ben, like once the game starts. Let's say, for sake of argument, Trae Young is able to go and is in the starting lineup. Well, just because he's in the starting lineup doesn't mean he's going to be able to play for 40 minutes like he has in every game basically this season. I mean, like you referenced, not only just the wear and tear of playing basketball and getting out there and bumps and bruises, but, guys have tried to be physical with him already. Is that something that wears on him? Does he go out for 5 or 6 minutes and then need 5 or 6 minutes? We don't know. And I think we can all speculate and say this would be the best case scenario. Maybe this would be the worst case scenario. But until we watch tonight's game or listen to tonight's game, we're not going to know what the reality is for Trae Young.
Yeah, we're going to be able to see real quick what the game plan is going to be as far as like Trae Young. I mean, I don't think he's going to be able to play the entire game, the minutes, or the manner in which they were like was giving him minutes throughout the course of this series. You're going to have to be very, very careful, because if you do indeed win tonight, you're going to have to be able to have a more healthier Trae Young for the rest of the series. But I think it's less to do about Trae Young and more to do about his role players, his teammates. I know that Gallinari and Clint Capella, and Collins and Bogdanovich, and Lou Williams and Hurd and those guys haven't been asked to do that much, but kind of like let Trae lead. Can they play a leading role? Can you have a more of a star mentality tonight? I think if they do it as a group, it takes the pressure off of one person individually, because it's going to come down to who can light up that box score not named Trae Young. You're going to have to find a way to try to neutralize what Giannis does, and Middleton. If he goes up like he did in game 3, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger issue, is not so much what can Trae give you offensively, but what can he give you defensively. Again, he's made improvements and strides, but again, he had to come up from the worst defender in the NBA last year to what he's giving you now. And now you got a hobbled foot, Chris Middleton out there really coming to life in the last game. I think for me, it is not so much what can you get offensively out of Trae, but can he help you create stops defensively tonight with his foot injury. Going to be interesting to watch.
And it's a tough matchup already, because you're talking about Drew Holiday, who's a really big, producer in terms of his offensive scoring, but also distributing of the basketball. Is a guy that has been a big asset for the Bucks and is probably bigger than Trae to begin with. And now you're talking about Trae not being 100%, being banged up, already having to deal with a significant responsibility offensively. So I think that's a good point, Kevin, is if you assume that Trae Young is going to be matched up against Drew Holiday and not Chris Middleton, and I think that's the reality of what you're looking at. Holiday's had some really big games this postseason. He's capable of shooting from deep and attacking the basket. So even if Trae Young is fairly close to what we want to see, hope to see, might be able to see offensively, what does that leave defensively? That's a fair question.
I mean, a condensed season last year, you get a full season this year, and you made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Some of this is just the fact that your body's just feeling the wear and tear from 2 seasons, even though one was like, very, very short. I think they got it in them. You will learn a lot about this Hawks team tonight. And Nate McMillan, if they can find a way to beat the favorite in the Eastern Conference Finals, to at least push it to a potential, a Game 6.
And we'll talk with Home Team Brandon Leak when we come back. Also, Rich Styles next hour on 3 and Out, talking some golf as well. And we'll look at Nolan Smith. Is this a year for him to step up in a big, big way for the Georgia Bulldogs? All that and more coming up in hour number 2 of 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, go to our YouTube page, get a podcasted version of the show each and every day. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you're with us here, hour 2 on this Tuesday. A lot to get to. We'll chat with Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show. You had Harris English, former UGA golfer, winning an 8-hole playoff this past weekend. So he'll join us. Rich will. We'll talk about that. And looking ahead to this week on the PGA Tour, we'll look at Nolan Smith. Is this a year for Nolan Smith to shine there in a big way in Athens as the former number 1 recruit in the country, now getting his turn to shine and step up? We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. And we are efforting home team Brandon Leak. We should have him here momentarily, co-host of the home team in Hamilton show on 680 The Fan, and the Hawks and Bucks game for tonight. BJ and Ben, and obviously everybody starts questions, concerns, thoughts about Trae Young and his effectiveness, his availability. I know you had some of the Hawks players telling Mike Conti earlier, hey, he looked good and shoot around a walkthrough for what that's worth, but nobody really knows what you're going to get, how much time you really feel like he can play effectively, and more out of Trae Young tonight.
And I think correspondingly to that, the question Ben's been asking all week is an important one, really all series. Who's going to be the number 2 scorer? And I think when Trae Young is completely healthy and is 100%, that's still an important question, because obviously to advance in the NBA playoffs, you got to have multiple guys produce, and the Hawks have had that. Roster balance has been one of the strengths of this team. Scoring balance has been one of the strengths of this team. But if you look at the Hawks tonight and assume that Trae's not 100%, if he goes, he might not be himself. I think that question is even more important. Is it John Collins? Is it Danilo Gallinari? Is it Lou Williams? Is it Kevin Huerter? Is it Bogdan Bogdanovic? I mean, who is it that maybe gives you – I don't even think – Ben, I think when you're asking that question, you're not necessarily talking about 17, 18. You're saying who can give you 20, 25 plus. I think you need that out of somebody aside from Trae Young tonight.
Well, and bigger than just tonight. I mean, what happens if you do indeed beat Milwaukee? You got to go to the finals. You want to know that if guys are called upon to do this, you're not called upon to do this in the NBA finals. We've seen this to propel us to the NBA finals. For every professional athlete, there comes a time in your career that you got to show, why you are who you are. You might not have shown it every single play, every single game, but everybody got a game in them. Everybody got their game and was like, I couldn't miss tonight. So for me, I think they're going to have to see some guys do that tonight.
And again, we have found the co-host of Home Team in Hamilton on 680 The Fan there in Atlanta. Home Team, Brandon Leak joins us here on 3 and Out. Home Team, welcome. What is your gut feeling as to the effectiveness of Trae Young tonight, how much we'll see him, et cetera?
Hard to predict. There's been one report that he did participate in shoot-around today, and he did look like he was not extremely troubled, but that doesn't mean he'll be able to go, ready to go, or effective to go tonight. So I think this thing is going to be a game-time decision now that we know there's a bone bruise, and it is a situation where it probably hurts him a little bit, and we have to find out whether or not it's management or something that will just be debilitating, too much so for him to go tonight.
Given Trae's situation, who has to step up and be that scorer, at very least the number 2 scorer, maybe even the leading scorer tonight, given what Young is dealing with?
Well, this is a John Collins game. The Hawks are just now in a place where every game, every minute, every quarter is a desperation situation. You can't get down 3 games to 1 and try to think you're going to pull things off, beating the Bucks in a row the way that they've been playing. So this is a must-win tonight. And John Collins really has to be the guy that steps up. Really didn't get that opportunity early because he was in foul trouble as Giannis went right at him. He has to stay out of foul trouble. But we saw last night without Kawhi Leonard, probably the rest of the way, the Clippers were able to win a very important game with Paul George, their number 2 guy, Reggie Jackson serving as the number 3 guy, and we need to figure out who's number 2 and number 3 so that the Hawks can even up this series and guarantee a game back in Atlanta.
And Home Team, he was sticking with that. He was sticking with John Collins. When you look at the fact that he was a guy that before Trae Young got here, that's who the Hawks was building around. Collins was the guy that was building the offense around, and then when Trae comes in, obviously he's there to run the offense. How much does he need to step up, not just for the night, but as I mentioned earlier, if and when this Hawks team do find a way to take it to 7 and beat Milwaukee, they need to know that they got guys not named Trae they can depend on in the finals.
Well, yeah, and I think the bottom line is, we now know exactly what is to be expected of everybody on the team. This has come down to execution, and somebody who's been here for a long time should figure what his role should be and how important it is. He had a very, very passionate statement that he wrote earlier today, and it's one of those deals where this is going to come down to whether or not the Atlanta Hawks are going to be able to close out in the fourth quarters and find out what kind of defense they're going to have. We saw Cam Reddish earlier in the series. Don't know what that means. And this is also a Nate McMillan game. Nate McMillan can't allow guys who aren't producing to stay out on the court long. He's going to have to find the right combination of guys out there. And Bogey, who's been out there dragging a knee, 3 for 11 the last game. Solomon Hill, who clearly is aggressive and likes to be out there defensively with a lot of energy, just couldn't give you anything offensively. He's going to have to find Nate McMillan the right group of guys to be able to score. And the other thing is they're going to have to send the right guys to the free throw line because Clint Capella is just having a tough time whenever he's around the rim and he gets hacked.
Home team Brandon Leak joining us here on 3 and Out. And you look at this run that the Hawks are on. Do you still feel like they're playing with house money, or at this point, do you throw that term away and say, guys, this is the Eastern Conference Finals. You're in it, and you can win it if you play to a level here?
Well, I think it depends on what you expect of these guys the next couple of games. What we've seen throughout the playoffs is that every time you believe that they're supposed to lose or the wind in their sails is supposed to be diffused, they find a way. They're going to have to draw on some of the lessons they learned in the regular season where they had so many guys out and had to win games and won games with so many guys out. But now you're in a place where things are starting to tighten up. And, I don't know if it's house money. The question I think is, are you a better team than the Milwaukee Bucks? I don't think the answer is yes, but I still think the answer is you can beat the Milwaukee Bucks. And now you got a couple of very, very important pieces who are not 100%. You're going to have to find a way to execute. You're going to need your veterans and Lou Williams and Danilo Gallinari to help you score. And you're going to have somebody with a hot hand, if not a bunch of somebodies with a hot hand, to beat these guys because they have fumbled the ball, the Milwaukee Bucks, the last couple of years in the postseason, and they really feel that they have an opportunity to punch a ticket to the NBA Finals, and the Hawks are going to have to stop.
How do you defend Chris Middleton tonight?
Well, there you go. He's gotten himself together. Danilo Gallinari is supposed to be, Bogey is supposed to be the guy who was guarding him in the regular season, but they tried a couple of different guys on him, and the fact that he was able to get things going, not just early in the game, but in the fourth quarter is going to be a problem. I really expect him to be a max contract guy tonight. I'm more concerned about the bullet I think the Hawks have been dodging, and that's with Drew Holiday. He's been awful shooting the basketball. He's shooting at a high volume. And if they have Giannis, Middleton, and Drew Holiday clicking on all cylinders, that could be a big problem for the Atlanta Hawks. It's something that they need to certainly be on the lookout for tonight.
I mean, home team, I know something that has gotten lost, obviously, during this entire playoff run is just Nate McMillan, his ability to do for this Hawks team with George, Coach Lloyd Pierce wasn't able to do. Just does he have a game plan in him, an adjustment plan that doesn't include Trey down the stretch good enough to beat this Milwaukee Bucks team that you just mentioned, who hopefully can still deal with a Drew Holiday who's not been himself thus far?
Yeah, that's going to be the question, Ben. I mean, the bottom line is the book on Nate McMillan is he's kind of stubborn with his rotations, and that has led to his poor playoff record. And so now it really could be an all-hands-on-deck kind of game. And if Trey is there, what kind of condition will he be? Will he be able to, blow by defenders? Will he be able to use his incredible passing if he is a bit hobbled? Will he not be there at all? And how will Nate McMillan deal with that? Can you run the offense the way you want to without Trae Young on the floor? Brandon Goodwin played some very important minutes earlier in the season. I have to wonder if this will be a game for him where he might get a chance to shine and maybe be able to provide some points. But I just think that the Atlanta Hawks, are starting to feel the effect of attrition throughout the regular season and now the postseason, and they're going to have to find a way to outscore the Milwaukee Bucks in the fourth quarter, and they're going to have to find multiple ways of doing it. The one thing that bothers me is that the Hawks made their free throw or their 3-pointers last game. They knocked down 50 3-pointers, and they still weren't able to get the W. So they're going to have to figure out a lot of things, and hopefully they can just get off to a good start and not be down by 9 or 10 points in the first half.
Home team, you look at tonight's ball game. Is this your kind of all eggs in the basket? Everybody all in on game 4. If you lose this and go down 3-1, do you have enough left in you to pull off the miraculous there down 3-1?
You know, again, counting out the Hawks hasn't worked well for, people who like to invest in gambling or people who just want to see this come to an end because they don't think the Hawks belong. But you're really putting yourself in a bad situation if you're down 3-1 with 2 more, including a potential Game 7 in Milwaukee. So, you have to coach, you have to play, you have to defend, you have to free throw shoot like this is the biggest game of the season because, in fact, it is the biggest game of the season.
You were able to out-rebound the Bucks in Game 1. That was not the case. It really wasn't even close in Games 2 or 3. How important is it going to be for Atlanta to be effective on the glass tonight?
Well, that's huge. It was a big rebounding discrepancy in Game 3. And, that could be a function of a lot of different things. With the 3-pointers coming off in a series like this, both teams, launching some 3-pointers. The question will be, how those long rebounds shake out. The Hawks were missing some in the fourth quarter and in the third quarter, which led to some transition opportunities. So I think rebounding is huge because the Hawks don't want to give up too many transition buckets the way that the Bucks like to just run at the rack and get a quick points or and one or free throws. And it can't be all Clint Capella. You're going to have John Collins out there on the floor, and him missing so much time because of foul trouble certainly played into a part negatively for the Hawks in Game 3.
I mean, Brandon, with all those, everything like that could happen, and obviously Trey's health is going to be huge. Do you think this Hawks team got enough left in the tank to just make it a competitive game? Because it seems as though they be in every game. It just gets away from them. I guess I'm saying, who do you trust in crunch time to not actually make a shot, but to go to the foul line to maybe seal a win for the Hawks?
Well, I think that's a very good point. They shot poorly from the free throw line, but that was because Clint Capella kept going and missing. And I think, sometimes you have poor free throw shooting games when you send 4 free throw shooters to the line. But the Hawks have plenty of guys who are really good free throw shooters. Danilo Gallinari, 90% free throw shooter. Lou Williams can make free throws. John Collins can make some free throws. You need to make sure that the right guys are going to the free throw line if you want to be able to close out. And that's one of the strengths of the Hawks. They really aren't down much in the fourth quarters of these games where they have been down. So they're always right in striking distance by a couple of possessions. And they're going to have to find a way to get the right guys there. If they're missing shots and if they are not stopping Giannis running to the rim and their big 3 are having a way, this could be a tough game for the Hawks tonight.
Home team, Brandon Leak, joining us here on 3 and Out. So home team, I know people throw this out there, and we know the rep of the ATL Sports, I guess, is a town. Is Atlanta becoming a basketball city, or are they just riding the train of this Hawks team right now because they are playing really, really well?
I think it's really interesting to watch. It really feels like this isn't some kind of magical carpet ride like we've seen with some of the other teams who come out of nowhere. The Braves, when they finally got started in the early 90s, the couple of Super Bowl runs that the Falcons had. This feels like this could be a turning of the page with finally getting a young superstar who is likable with the fans and with the city. And, hopefully it feels like starting to get the recognition around the league. So you're starting to see a lot of people wonder if there'll be other free agents or other really good players who might want to come to Atlanta to play with Trae Young, which is something that, generations or everybody who's been a Hawks fan really haven't been able to see, even though we've signed some pretty talented, guys over the years. We haven't had superstars flock to Atlanta, and it's starting to feel like a page has been turned, and maybe this isn't something fleeting. It's just the beginning of something that could be well played and sustainable for many years to come.
Home team, Brandon Leak, our guest here on 3 and Out, co-host of the Home Team and Hamilton Show, 680 The Fan in Atlanta. Home team, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Anytime, guys.
Appreciate it. Home team, Brandon Leak joining us. Hawks, Bucks, Game 4 tonight. Got to have it. if you are the Atlanta Hawks this evening. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. College football, right around. I mean, right around the corner. BJ and Ben, you got a couple more days until we get to July 1st, and then it's a month countdown till you get to the fall practices starting up again. But you look at some people who are looking for a breakout year. BJ and Ben, I think a lot of folks around Georgia would say Nolan Smith. Is it time for a bust-out breakout year for Nolan Smith, the number one recruit at any position in 2019, ranked ahead of guys like Kayvon Thibodeau, Derek Stingley, Spencer Rattler, guys who we've seen playing big roles at the collegiate level. Obviously, he's played a backup role to some good players, BJ. But is it time for Nolan Smith to step up and be a superstar?
I think he's going to have a huge year. You know, you're talking about an incredibly talented young man and a guy that, had all the hype. But what's amazing is even in a limited role, right? Even in a reserve role, if you want to say it, last year, backing up Azeez Ojulari, who was a top 50 pick, and you had Jermaine Johnson there too. Those guys no longer there. Nolan Smith has still shown you what he's capable of. And this is just a frame of reference thing, and I'm trying to double check it to make sure I'm right. But Adam Anderson is obviously one of the top pass rushers in the country, and I believe he's the SEC's returning leader, or he's right there in sacks from last season. He's a guy that's getting some All-American attention, certainly All-SEC attention. Well, over the last 2 seasons, Adam Anderson has 19 quarterback hurries, and he's one of the best defenders in the country. Over the last 2 years, Nolan Smith has 18 quarterback hurries. So I think the production has been there. He's been really close. Had, I think a 2-sack game against Arkansas to open last year. He's been really close to having more consistent production in terms of the sack totals, even with limited opportunities in terms of coming in potentially behind Ojulari at times. But I think Smith's going to have a huge year. I think that he's poised to be one of the best pass rushers, best playmakers off the edge in the SEC, right alongside Adam Anderson. And, people are so quick to kind of evaluate a player. I mean, this guy hadn't taken a single upperclassman snap yet. I mean, Ben, I know you've talked a lot about how for you, your banner season obviously was as a senior, where you were a finalist for the Mackey Award. And, prior to that, maybe you didn't necessarily have the consistent production. And, there are different circumstances, different situations. But again, Nolan Smith has been a proven player at getting to the quarterback, and the numbers reflect that. And I think you're going to see those quarterback hurries turn into sacks, tackles for loss, and the consistent production a lot of people want to see. I think you're going to see that. He's going to have a big year.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a great thing for a guy, like Nolan Smith. I mean, was blessed enough to be able to meet him, 3 years ago when he had already signed to go to Georgia. But BJ, we always talk about too much is given, much required. Nolan Smith was number one recruit in the country. And look at the names. Kayvon Thibodeau, got a chance to meet him at Florida State. Derek Stingley was the best cornerback as a true freshman in 2019. Evan Neal. I mean, you look at what he's gonna do this year. At Alabama. Spencer Rattler. I mean, I'm watching this young man on Netflix. And DeMarvin Leo, when you look at what he's gonna bring to the table, BJ, for that Texas A&M defense. For me, this is what happens when. This is what recruiting has become, right? They tracking guys. Like a lot of times we'll say, oh, what happened to this guy? Well, Nolan Smith was the number one player in the country in some classifications. That's got to mean out of the top 300 represented by, Georgia, Florida, Texas, and California, he was the number one. So basically it's saying it just adds to the narrative of Georgia, right? Georgia, this is supposed to be the team, what they did in the transfer portal. But Nolan Smith, at a certain point, they're going to be saying, come on, because you're right, BJ, returning – tackles for a loss, he's right there. But I think they're comparing it to like a Kayvon Thibodeau, built real similar, similar skill set. And Thibodeau takes over games. And I'm not saying the Pac-12 and the SEC are the same. I'm not comparing the two. But what I am saying is the criticism or the feedback, it is fair. There's a reason why Nolan Smith went to Georgia. He wanted to go to one of the biggest schools, high-profile defense in the biggest conference in the world, and he wanted to be able to be a great player. So I do agree, BJ. I mean, as a late bloomer myself, I am a huge component of the late bloomers. But I was on the number one recruiting class. I was one of 25. I wasn't the number one recruit in the country. I played with Brock Berlin, who was the number one recruit in 2000. And I think sometimes people don't get And that was way before social media. That's back when we still had magazines. Yes, people, magazines, things people read. That's what they had when I came out. Now it's social media. So when you talk about the pressures of even in his class, I mean, who's the headliner? Nolan Smith. Defense, so I fair or unfair, it comes with the territory. BJ and Kevin, and I know he can handle it. I mean, what does Kirby Smart say? Pressure is a privilege. Well, he don't have to play. So for me, I think if I'm Nolan, I use that, as a motivator to be able to say, man, they're talking about everybody but me, and and we know what happens. The lowest I think before Michael Sam, the lowest a defensive player of the year in the SEC has ever been drafted in the second round. Right. Well, if Nolan Smith can go out there, BJ, you talking about All-American and if he can put up those type of numbers, even comparable to being the SEC defensive player of the year, a conversation, that means that Georgia gonna have a chance to do what they want to do. Postseason. But yeah, Nolan Smith. Unfortunately for him, it is time because they ain't recruiting you because your upside. They're recruiting you because of your right now. We need it to happen right now. And for him, right now, it's been 2 years. I think you're gonna be able to put it all together this year.
And I know that's tough. BJ, because you come right in as the number one recruit, and people think you're going to be an All-American dominating stud right then and there. But there, as Ben said, there are others' expectations. You're the number one player coming out in your recruiting class. You're expected to be the leader of that defense. Again, maybe that's unfair. But you say, hey, there's some signs that show, given an increased amount of snaps, that might be going in that direction. But I think the spotlight's going to be on him and that defense, because where does he play? He plays a spot that's going to directly affect the four new guys way at the back coming into that Georgia defense. So I think he will have certainly between him and Anderson, but him more because he has more of those, headlines and credentials, so to speak, to go out there and have a big season.
Well, and I think he showed that ability in year one. I believe he had 11 tackles for loss in year one, which was one of the top totals in the SEC. So you're talking about a guy that or not tackles for loss, quarterback hurries. You're talking about a guy that has shown the ability to get into the offensive backfield. And you're right. When you're talking about an edge rusher, that is what you're asked to do, is to impact games by getting to the quarterback. And I think he has a proven track record of doing that. And now that he is in the starting lineup, and I think he's one of the key cogs. I mean, you look at this front seven. I was talking with Christian about it, and you're looking at, Anderson and Dean and, Walker and certainly Davis and Wyatt. And with Nolan Smith adding to that, it is a dynamic group. It is an extremely talented group, right up there with Clemson and Alabama as the best front seven in all of college football. And I think you're going to see the sack numbers increase. Again, it's kind of, some of the advanced stats in baseball. I know they've talked about this with Freddie Freeman, Kevin, where they say, hey, the hard hits are there. They're just not quite falling in. Well, that's kind of how I look at quarterback hurries. If you have high quarterback hurry totals, and all the elite pass rushers do, that's showing me that you can beat your man at the line of scrimmage and you can get into the offensive backfield. Sometimes the difference in doing that and getting the hurry versus getting the sack is what kind of play it is, maybe a half of a tenth of a second, or something crazy like that. I think he's shown the ability that he can get into the offensive backfield, and my bet is he has a banner season in 2021.
Well, BJ, I think you just answered the question. When people ask what's the difference between good and great, half a second. Like Nolan Smith, they need him to get there, because you're right. I mean, you making the quarterback hurry up, and that's a lost art. There aren't too many players in sports that will be great. I don't care who they are. Good is the enemy of great. And I think the thing about Nolan, he's shown out of every high school athlete in football, they rank him number one. Now the quarterback, now the running back, and that's saying something from a guy who, I think he went to IMG down there in Florida. Was originally, from Savannah, Georgia. And to me, if I'm Nolan, that means, hey man, you think they forgot about me? No. They talking about you with Thibodeau and those guys. So I think that for him, use it as added pressure, because if you on that Georgia defense, you need Nolan to be stellar. You need him to be a stud, because I don't care what nobody say. You got a patched up secondary. You got some guys from other schools that you hope can gel in this system. Well, for them to gel in the back end, like Kevin said, you're gonna need that front four, meaning that alpha dog Nolan to take over game. Because BJ, he coming from a long line of outside linebacker play. I don't think you can play better than Jarvis Jones and and I had to play, good God, David Pollack. He was a defensive end. He stuck his hand in the ground. I think you don't go to Georgia if you don't want to make a name for yourself. And for Nolan, I think this is the year. When I spoke to Nolan Smith, I say, hey, man, how you feel about them Georgia? How you feel about that Florida Georgia game? He said, coach already told us you do not keep your job if you can't beat Florida. Well, you don't keep your job either if you can't go out there and be a stud. They will be less patient with Nolan because Nolan has greatness in it. Most players, they're on great teams. They're not great players. I think Nolan got a shot to be a great player, but it ain't gonna be about the hurries, BJ. He need to put that quarterback on the ground with that brown thing still in his hand.
I think that's going to be the X factor to Georgia's season there on defense is how often he can get there. And as Ben said, bring it all the way home with a sack at the end of the day. We've got more to come here. It's 3 and Out. Rich Styles going to join us in about 15 minutes here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We'll chat with Rich Styles coming up here in just a little bit. But Charlie Morton tonight against the Mets, huge start for him tonight, BJ. And I saw something earlier that the starters ERA for the Braves since the middle of June, under 2 for Atlanta here. If you take out, I think, Bryce Wilson and one other's like spot start, but the other starters who are solidified the rotation, ERA under 2 since the mid portion of June. That obviously has to continue tonight for Atlanta.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know how long that can continue, but yeah, Charlie Morton's been brilliant. Last 2 starts, 14.2 innings pitched, and that's a key, right? It's not just can you pitch well, but can you pitch well into the 7th, 8th inning? Charlie Morton has given you 14 2/3, just 4 hits in those innings, 0 runs, and 18 strikeouts. I mean, he has been balling. You know, kind of the way I look at the stats sometimes, I kind of feel like a bit of a market correction maybe on the horizon.
Yeah, Kevin, is coming through in the big way.
I hate that I think that way. I don't want to think that way. But what I'm saying is you normally don't see, 20 consecutive scoreless innings in baseball. So I think you may have to score some runs tonight. But Charlie's been pitching great. And to your point, Morton's been kind of the catalyst, but Drew Smiley's been a lot better. Certainly Ian Anderson's been really good. Kyle Muller's been great. So, yes, the starting pitching the last couple of weeks has not been the issue for the most part. And Morton, I mean, I would have to imagine, even for a guy that's been in the league 15 years and has been an all-star a couple of times, he hadn't had many stretches like this, especially with those strikeout numbers. I know traditionally he's not really regarded as a pure strikeout pitcher like some guys are, but he's been incredible, and he deserves a lot of credit for what he's done.
Well, BJ, I mean, I was waiting on the market correction. You always say it's coming. Now, Kevin, this is what I'm gonna start doing. It's coming. And we don't need it to come tonight. Just farther in October. Let it come then.
No, not in October. No, you want to
No. You're making it work. All I'm saying is, Kevin, look, I don't want to feel this way. All I'm saying is the way I look at it is if you've had 14 consecutive scoreless innings, and I think it may even be more than that going back to the finish of his 3rd start, if you have 15, 16 consecutive scoreless innings, doesn't that have to kind of correct itself?
No, it doesn't. If you continue pitching well, again, we got to step aside so we get to Rich Styles, but some people are glasses half full guys. Ben, some people are glasses half empty guys. BJ's glass has a hole in it. That's all I'm going to say. We'll come back. Rich Styles will join us. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. I mean, it's just been a wild time in sports, quite frankly, BJ and Ben, over the last couple. I mean, the Braves Mets tonight. You've got the NBA Eastern Conference Finals with the Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals, but Game 4 coming up tonight. Golf's been going crazy as well as we chat with Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show. Rich, welcome. How are you?
Doing wonderful, guys, and I hope you are too.
Yep, we are. And I tell you what, man, it's been just a crazy couple of weeks with the PGA Tour, going back to Jon Rahm and the COVID test, and he wins the major championship, to last week, Harris English, who's out of UGA, practices right out of coastal Georgia here, wins a PGA Tour event on the 8th playoff hole. I mean, just completely unbelievable that it would take that long, but he comes out on top.
I mean, it was incredible. I mean, Harris English has been playing such incredible golf, not only from his talent, but from a mental aspect. I mean, he was in that playoff on every hole, and he normally doesn't show much emotion, but he sure did on a couple of putts that he made. Just one that he thought he won, and then the other one to win. I just think Harris is just having a great year. Justin Parsons has been doing an unbelievable job as far as helping him fix some minor things in his swing, but mostly with building up his confidence. And Tom Hemmings has been working with him as far as getting stronger, staying in the game longer, and not getting tired. An incredible win for Harris English.
And Rich, Kevin mentioned the playoff, obviously, but he also had a round 4 65. Have you seen many finishes like that where you have a 65 on Sunday and then you go out and win on the 7th or 8th playoff hole?
No. I mean, this was tied, I think, 7 or 8 other tournaments for the most playoff holes in the history of the PGA. I think 11 was the most playoff holes many, many years ago. But 8 playoff holes where these guys were just grinding down the stretch, and I mean, pars here and putts of 6, 7, 8 feet. Just an incredible display of staying in the match and having an opportunity to try and win a PGA tournament, which is very hard. Harris, in the last year and a half, has won twice, placed 3rd in the U.S. Open, and Hickok, what a way to play. I mean, he just has made himself into a household name just by playing 8 playoff holes and staying with Harris.
And Rich, I mean, a guy I want you to, know a little bit about. I mean, a guy, local guy from Savannah, Timothy O'Neill, a guy that's kind of like, took the long haul to, to kind of continue his PGA tour. I mean, I know he qualified for this upcoming tournament. Just talk about a little bit about Timothy O'Neill and just how he seems to be a guy, perseverance, that's just sticking with his lifelong dream to be a professional golfer.
I mean, it's just great. I mean, Tim has got a couple of exemptions into the tournament, Korn Ferry tournament up in Savannah, and that's where he lives. And he's just really been a grinder. And to have the opportunity to go up in Detroit and play in this special tournament, and then the winner, which he did, gets to play in the Detroit PGA Tour event, that's just an incredible. Just shows you the heart and the soul of these guys that are out there trying to grind and trying to make it on the PGA Tour, where they know, anybody can win. All you got to do is put 4 great rounds together. And Tim did that in order to get into the PGA tournament. And I am so thrilled for him. And we will definitely have him on the Back Nine Boys Golf Show sometime over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and Rich, you talk about his story, obviously, and played on some of the under tours and things of that nature. And as you say, he played in the event on Monday, a 2-day event that was specifically for minorities in golf, to give them a chance to play a PGA setup course, get a chance to qualify to get in. And he does that's going to get a chance to play this week. There's obviously a lot of stories like that out there on the PGA Tour about how difficult it is to get there, but obviously the tour doing what they can to get access and grow the game.
I mean, I think it's a great opportunity. I think the tour has done a great job of trying to bring everybody into the game and giving them opportunities to play into PGA Tour events. And I mean, you just look at what they've done over the years, the winners that they've had and the people that have had a chance to play on the tour. I just think this was a great opportunity up in Detroit. Tim O'Neill took advantage of it, and thrilled for him. And it just shows his heart. And and the way that he can play, and that, you know, all these guys are playing on the mini tours and the guys playing on the PGA tours. There's not a lot separating them. It could be 2 putts, it could be 3 putts, it could be a drive that was in the fairway or not. So these guys can play even though they're on the mini tours, and they can win PGA Tour events.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rich, there are so many compelling personal stories, and you think about, you know, Tim and what he's doing. How special are these individual stories where, yes, we like to look at the final scores and like to talk about, you know, 3 or 4 names potentially week to week, but how inspiring, just cool are some of these stories that you learn more about through every golf season.
Oh, I mean, talk about inspiration. I mean, these are stories that can change somebody's life. And whenever you have an opportunity to change your life and play this great game of golf and have an opportunity to take care of yourself and take care of your family and live your dreams, I mean, those things are special. Even if you have dreams of playing in a major league, baseball field, or making a major league team, or more importantly, as we're talking about golf, playing on the PGA Tour, it's just an unbelievable opportunity. Incredible that they had a chance to do it. And I think this will be something that Tim can cherish, and I hope he can take advantage of it, because he definitely can play like the PGA Tour players.
And Rich, do a guy like Tim O'Neill, is he more like the barometer? Like, I know we get used to talking about the best golfers in the world, and we talk about him as if we know him. But I mean, a guy like Tim O'Neill, I mean, I saw something like years ago he was talking about just how hard it is to be a professional golfer. I think when he first became a professional, I think Will Smith sponsored him when he first became one. Just talk about how hard it is to not just want to be a professional golfer, but just the grind it takes to maintain that status once you get there.
Well, I mean, talk about how hard it is. I mean, look at a guy like Harris English. You guys look at him now. We look at him now as a champion, as a PGA Tour 1-2 times so far this year. But here's a guy that didn't win for 7 years, 5 years. And now he's all of a sudden, everybody's talking about he's moved up in this, could have a chance to play on the Ryder Cup. I mean, these are incredible stories that these guys, when they were growing up playing junior golf, probably think these were the dreams that they had. I'd love to play on a Ryder Cup team. I'd love to win the U.S. Open. I'd like to win a PGA Tour event. And so, I mean, how incredible can that be to play this game of golf and have the opportunities and help charities along the way, which is what the PGA Tour does. I'm just amazed at some of the stories that have come out. And there's a lot that we don't know about, but there are some that we do.
Sure, and as you said, you make a cut on the PGA Tour. For a lot of folks who are out there grinding, that's a heck of a payday, just making it to Saturday and Sunday as well. Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, our guest. Rich, what you have coming up this weekend for us?
Well, I've actually got Harris's trainer, his personal trainer, to help him with his stamina, help him with his strength, improve his golf swing, and he's on this week, along with the president of Club Champion, which is one of the many stores that they have, including one up in Bluffton. I'm anxious to talk to Tom to find out what he works with Harris about, even when he's not on the tour, to get him in the strength and the position that he is today.
Absolutely, and coming fresh off of a 8-hole playoff marathon round there to finish it up, ought to be a great conversation. Rich, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Okay, guys. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you. Join Rich every Saturday and Sunday morning, 8 a.m. for the Back Nine Boys Golf Show. And again, a great story last week with Harris English. Tim O'Neill this week winning a 2-day event to get into the Rocket Mortgage Championship there in Detroit. And I know on the surface you say, well, Bryson DeChambeau's defending champion. He's there. Phil Mickelson, Ricky Fowler. It's a studded field there that Tim from Savannah going to be competing against. So we wish him certainly the best of luck with that opportunity that he earned to go out and compete this weekend in Detroit.
Yeah, very excited, and just a really cool story. And you're talking about, being up there again, like you said, Bryson DeChambeau won it last year in Detroit at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. So excited for his opportunity, rooting for him, and really, again, excited to see what he can do this weekend.
We've got a lot to get to coming up. It's been a busy hour, too. We get to take 3 in the next hour. And, of course, Hawks and Braves with a huge night tonight in Atlanta. Of course, the Hawks and Braves were buddied up, I believe, in New York a couple of weeks ago for the Knicks and the Braves and Mets. Now the Braves and Mets are back at it in Atlanta, and the Bucks and Hawks are going to be playing in downtown ATL later tonight, fellas. So once again, Hawks and Braves captivating a city. I think didn't they also play in Philly when they played the 7th? That just happened to work out. So the Braves have kind of followed the Hawks around, or vice versa, however you want to say it.
Yeah, right now I would say the Braves are following the Hawks around, given where the Hawks are. But look, we're all on Trae Young watch. We don't know what's coming up tonight. Obviously you're concerned about his health and you wish him the best first and foremost. But we don't know, and it may be game time before we know what's happening with Trae.
And that's a big decision. Game time there for the Atlanta Hawks. We'll get to more of that coming up in the final hour. It is 3 and Out. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. We're also streaming live Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. It's 3 and Out. Final hour next. Final hour, 3 and out on this Tuesday. Glad you're with us. A lot to get to. Hawks and Braves, big ones for both of those. Certainly Hawks big in game 4. Don't know Trae Young's official status other than questionable. How long he'll be able to go in a must-have for the Atlanta Hawks. We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. But first, had a busy hour too, so now we take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, fellas, take 1. Is Tampa Bay quietly, maybe even more unfortunately, becoming the center of the sports universe with the Bucks with the Super Bowl win, the Tampa Bay Rays, who are in St. Petersburg, the World Series appearance last year, and now the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Stanley Cup Finals.
And up apparently 1-0 as they won 5-1 in game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. But come on, man, Ben, you were a part of this. But you look at the Bucks winning the Super Bowl. They're probably the favorite to win it again. The Rays are really good, as the Atlanta Braves know. And unfortunately, I think one of the first series after the All-Star break is against Tampa. But the Rays are 47-32. And like you mentioned, Kevin, in the World Series last year, they're winning. And I guess this means that South Florida is going to emerge as a national contender now. Not Central Florida. South Florida's got to emerge for this trend to continue. Sorry, Cody, not Central Florida. But no, it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, their teams are very successful.
Maybe the NBA can move Cody's Orlando Magic to Tampa, and they could win.
Potentially, yeah, potentially. But look, the Lightning 5-1. I don't know anything about hockey, but Cody was talking about the Lightning. Look, they're very good. They're probably going to win the Stanley Cup. Ben, I know you said they have a lot of support down there. That's a beloved franchise. But listen, Tampa's doing it big right now. I mean, they're absolutely winning. They're winning championships. And I think the Rays are a team to watch out for with the World Series once again. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it couldn't be happening to a better city. I was blessed enough to be able to continue my career in Tampa. I had a couple
of yes, it could. ATL, it could happen to Atlanta.
Of course it could. I think too when you talk about the city of Tampa, I mean, maybe that Tom Brady Magic is working on more than just the Bucks. When you look at what the Lightning are doing, BJ, you talk about Tampa Bay, you talk about
I don't like the it could happen to a better city thing. I don't want Tampa to win anything. I don't want Tampa to win. BJ, do you want Tampa to win anything? Why do you want Tampa to win?
I mean, I'd rather Jacksonville win.
Whoa.
Let's talk about real things.
I mean, first Orlando Magic finna come to Tampa, whatever you call them, to win a championship, and not the Jacksonville Jaguars. You want them to win? My goodness.
Was Jacksonville in a more recent conference championship game than the Falcons?
Yeah, but they were. But the Falcons went to the Super Duper. We're not going to talk about what happened when they went to the Super Duper. You're always trying to give people a problem when they talk about them Jags.
Jaguars started 1-0 last season.
Always remember. Undefeated after the first week. Just defeated after that. And we know the rest of the story. Moving along, take 2. On this date in 1984, Orel Hershiser began a 6-year stretch in which he made every single start. I mean, what's one thing, not obviously a daily function you have to do, that you have done at least every 5 days for 6 consecutive years? I mean, that's a long haul to keep going out there and doing it.
I mean, I've taken a bath every day for probably 20 consecutive. No, it does count. What is this? Hold on a second, because there was some confusion in the show meeting.
No, there's no confusion at all. Ben wasn't confused. I wasn't confused.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, Kevin. You were implying that it had to be like an athletic endeavor. Well, yes, my answer is going to be the same as yours. I'm sorry I haven't done what Orel Hershiser did. Like, I'm sorry I don't have. Okay, what have you done athletically every day for the last 6 years? My answer is nothing.
That's the point of the question. The point of the question is nothing. I couldn't do that. I don't think I've even gone like, hey, I went on a 10-mile bike ride once every 5 days for 6 years. No.
You don't think it's impressive that I've taken a bath every day for the last 20 years?
Because we have showers.
Well, I mean, I also take showers. Like, they're not mutually exclusive. It's not like you take a bath,
That's even
you
more
can't
sad.
take a shower. No, you take both. You take both. They're different.
No. I mean, yeah, as far as like cleaning your body, no. Back when I was like working out all the time when I was in the league, yes, I would literally walk at least 2 miles every single day. Like, I mean, I would do it every single day to the point where, and I mean, I didn't do it for 6 years because I was only with the Titans before. But crazy. I used to get up early enough. I had to be to work at 8:00, so I would get up early enough to go to the YMCA that opened up at like 6, and I would get on. I would get on like the Stairmaster and work myself up for a sweat for like 45 minutes. Leave there, go home, take a shower, go to work. Don't ask me why I did this, but in my mind, I'm like, I got to keep a little routine going. And one day, one of the coaches come up to me and said, "Look, man, you can come here in the morning. What you mean? Like, you don't got to go to the Y. You make a mistake. We ain't got no nice equipment over here." Like, no, man, just closer to my house. So. Back when I was like crazy, like with the workout stuff, I used to do that stuff. But BJ, I knew you were gonna say a bath. What's your favorite thing to do? Take a bath. Where you rather be in the bathtub? I mean, we know only you and babies, take the most baths. Why? Because babies can't take showers yet. They're too small. But yeah, okay. I mean, BJ said, "Wait a minute." The question:
Christian takes the baths. Christian likes taking baths. JT likes taking baths.
I don't got time to wait on the tub to fill up and make sure the water is like lukewarm and not piping hot. I'm gonna get in the shower. It's over with. I'm done. Like,
you got to make time. You got to make time.
I mean, how many baths you took at Kevin's house?
At least a couple.
And we threw that tub out. Had to get a new one. Moving along. Take 3 since 1977. Marv Albert, man, he has been the dude calling basketball. The Eastern Conference Finals, though, going to be his last event he broadcasts. So Hawks and Bucks. Is he the voice you associate with basketball first and foremost? And then to follow up, who are some voices and broadcasters that are pretty much synonymous with the sport that they were doing?
Yeah, probably with Marvin. Kevin, didn't you say in the show meeting he's either close or is 80 years old right now?
Marv Albert, I think I looked it up. He was 80 years old. I was like, man, he does not look 80. But, man, I think he is one guy to me that is, I guess because of the era I grew up in as well. Of course, I guess everybody else, if he's been calling it since 1977. But, like, you just think about a lot of the great calls he made. Like, oh, what a move by Jordan. They show that clip all the time when he posterizes Patrick Ewing on the baseline. And that's the Marv Albert call. And you have seen it, from all the great NBA finals and things that he has done over the years. Definitely when I hear Marv Albert, I don't think football or baseball. Like, it is specifically the NBA I think about when I hear Marv Albert open his mouth and say something about sports. I'm thinking NBA.
And there are so many great announcers, so many great college football announcers. We were talking about 7, 8, 9, 10 of our favorite guys during the show meeting of our favorite commentators. And I think for me, I think about Vern Lundquist and just being there every Saturday at 3:30, the SEC game of the week. And yeah, Keith Jackson, obviously Brent Musburger. But I think with Vern Lundquist, it was just, you knew where he was going to be every Saturday afternoon. And that's right there with you. And talking about the best games and the best programs, the best conference, the SEC. And what was really amazing, and I don't want to steal the thunder, Ben. Obviously, you were inducted into the Florida Georgia Hall of Fame, and in your class was Vern Lundquist. And I was honored to be there and watch you. It was an incredible moment. And after the Hall of Fame banquet, all of you that were inducted were so gracious and stayed afterwards and talked with everybody and took pictures. And it was amazing. I stayed and waited in line to talk to Vern Lundquist just for 45 seconds, just to, ask him, hey, I think I asked him, hey, what advice would you give, someone in the industry? And he sat and talked with me and, shared some perspective, just a legendary figure and some of the biggest, most iconic moments in recent college football history in the modern college football era. Vern Lundquist has been right there, and it was really cool to get to meet him, been down there in Jacksonville that day.
Yeah, it was. I mean, my mom, who's never ever, been starstruck before, at least I ain't never seen. She pushing me, talking about that's Vern Lunch, but she pushed me to the side. I'm like, well, what am I? She was like, I don't know. I mean, you ain't Vern, so I'm like, okay, so yeah. I mean, but for me, I mean, John Madden, back, growing up and watching, watching Monday Night Football. I mean, I'm a big, boxing guy. So Jim Lampley, Al Bernstein, Larry Merchant, BJ. But this is why I'm happy about this. I like track and field. There's a guy by the name of Otto Bowles. This is why you should like Otto. Otto is from Trinidad and Tobago. So, and I know how much you love Trinidad and Tobago, the history they got with the U.S. men's national team, soccer, things of that nature. But this is the guy, to me, that's synonymous with boxing. It's Michael Buffer, because even though he's not going to announce it, I mean, when you hear that from the MGM Grand and hello man, let's get that. You know what I'm saying? It's like you get, because in a sense, it's like, Kevin, if you make it to the big time in boxing, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I like how he look down at his little paper. He'll say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MGM Grand. And he's just going through it. He goes, and then when you talk to him, he talks nothing like that. So yeah, Michael Buffer is going to be one, for me, because he lets you know, hey man, you here. I mean, they say Michael Buffer make like $1 million to say that. He get $1 million. Like,
he's got a trademark.
So now you got the new guy.
Say it anywhere else.
You got the new guy now that say, it's showtime. You got him, but he ain't Michael Buffer. He probably making $500,000.
No, he trademarked his phrase. You can't say it. He's the only one that can say it.
Listen, let me tell you something, people. When people talk about what is smart, I took words that I didn't invent, and you can't say them without giving me some of that cheese. So Michael Buffer, for me, I mean, I watched. It's funny. I watched. Jay-Z had an album called Fade to Black, and he performed in Madison Square Garden. He put the tickets on sale the same day, and it sold out. To let you know, Jay-Z said Michael Buffer announced him. He'll say all the way from Marcy Project. I see Buffer to do that, dude. So yeah, Michael Buffer is that guy.
Okay, first, thanks for bringing up the World Cup memories.
No, I mean, you might have forgot.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And then secondarily, did want to give a shout out to Wes Durham. Just growing up in the state of Georgia and hearing him call Georgia Tech games, especially as I first started my career in the industry, hearing him call Georgia Tech games on Saturday and then Atlanta Falcons games on Sunday, does a great job, and really enjoy Wes Durham's work.
That's Take 3. We do it each and every single day, usually at 4:00. Today we had to do it a little bit later, but we've got more to come here on 3 and Out. Hawks and Braves talk around the corner as well. Name, image, likeness, just 2 days away, and you should start seeing all the stuff flowing in. BJ and Ben, I've actually now seen, again, this is just the dawn of where we're at. Before we have to step aside, if you've been on Twitter lately, I've actually seen college athletes say, hey, I'm in Florida in 2 days. I can do this. Hit me up. I'll be happy to. Multiple athletes doing that, saying, here I am. I'm willing to rep your product. Hit me up and we'll get this done. We'll talk about that and more. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Of course, name, image, likeness, all in the news coming up in just a couple of days here in our state. And earlier I had a chance to speak with Chris Burnett, former Georgia Bulldog offensive lineman, and even back in his playing days was kind of at the forefront of pushing for name, image, likeness rights and more amongst college athletes. We had a chance to talk to him about where he was when he started it and what's obviously coming here within the next couple of days. Georgia, two-time SEC East champion, 3-year starter there on the offensive line at the University of Georgia, and way back in the day was at the forefront of this. Chris Burnett joins us here on 3 and Out. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Kevin. Ben, thank y'all for having me on.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on. And I say way back when, 2014, obviously Todd Gurley gets a 4-game suspension for doing what in 3 days will be perfectly fine, which is taking money for autographs. And you tweeted out then that, hey, a college athlete who can't profit off your own name, the NCAA didn't give him his talent or his name. And here we are 7 years later, and it's about to be a reality. Talk about just being in that time and kind of to see where we're at now.
Yeah, it kind of feels like we're in the twilight zone, if I'm to be totally honest with you, but in a very good way. I'm very grateful just to kind of see how things have progressed. My last season in college was 2013, and during that time I had a paid internship with the NCPA and was in the midst of some controversy around, just kind of allowing players to profit off of their name. And I just had experienced and seen it firsthand, AJ Green in 2010, and then seeing it with, a former teammate in Todd Gurley and his circumstance. It was frustrating because I'm actually one of the few guys who doesn't want to see college football become a semi-pro league where they're paying players and it's, to the highest bidder and everyone is getting paid in that way. But I do believe it's anti-American for players not to be able to profit off of their own name, benefit, and talent in some form or fashion, whether it be for marketing deals or doing a YouTube channel or something like that. So it's exciting to see that within a few days they'll finally have that opportunity.
And Chris, and when you say that, you don't want to see it come semi-pro. You don't want to see it become going to the highest bidder. And you've got to see it from both rounds. When you're in that seat, it's hard to see the full picture. Then you take a step away and you say, oh, is it because you saw what it could potentially become and saying, dude, I want it to happen, but this is it because because at the same time, where social media is now compared to when you was in school and when there wasn't social media when I was in school. But what do you fear the most about when you say it is anti-American and I want the best for the players, but I don't want this thing to become to, really 45, 55, 75 sold to the man with the brand.
Yeah, it's not that I'm so much against it. It's more so that I believe there's a better way. I think there's a better solution. The NCAA for the longest has claimed that it's about being a student first and an athlete second. And I believe that the way to empower players to utilize their talents and gifts on the field, but also to get their education, is to incentivize education. And so for me, I would love to see them put together a trust, or each individual school to put together a trust to where when there's revenue that's generated, instead of them, just funneling that back into the program or giving it to the next coach or paying the coaches who's already left and just buying out that contract, to put it in a trust and allow any player who graduates to get access to, $25, $50, $100, $200,000 that they may have generated in revenue during their time in college. And then they can use that as a fresh start, whether they make it to the NFL or NBA or any professional sports league or not. And I just feel like that would allow players to truly benefit off of it, but also make NCAA and those programs underneath it to put the money where their mouth is. If it's really about education and it's really about, these guys being set up the way that they should when it comes to learning and putting emphasis on schooling, then they should do that.
Chris, you talked about your time with the National College Players Association. I guess for starters, tell folks what that is, who may not know what that is, and kind of what your involvement with them was all about, and kind of what you took from that. I guess that experience.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Kevin. I think when I was in college, the NCPA was considered a de facto unofficial players association for college athletics, specifically for basketball and football. So those revenue generating sports. And Ramogi Huma, he was a former college football player. I believe he played at UCLA. He was a linebacker. He started the NCPA, and he was all around the controversy with the Ed O'Bannon case. And, basically the whole deal that killed NCAA football. I don't know if y'all love NCAA football
we do.
I do. Yeah, so I was depressed. I was so upset about it, but I was grateful because I was like, man, at least I got to be in the last one, at least for now. But it looks like we're coming back. And during that time with the NCPA, we were basically just trying to be the legs and feet of Ramogi, as well as really all players across the country. We were getting petitions signed to, increase medical benefits for players after they're done. We were trying to get petitions signed to adjust the way practices were handled or managed, or holding schools accountable to the 20-hour rule on a weekly basis, things like that. And it was really just trying to provide awareness. And as soon as I was done with college, and the NCPA has kind of progressed on from what it was when I was there, but it was really just a bunch of guys from multiple schools across the country, Georgia Tech, Clemson, Georgia, a few UCLA, et cetera, just trying to have our voices be heard. And it's pretty incredible to see where some of those small grassroots work has kind of led to where we are now.
Chris, how important is having a collective voice and working together in unity, working together with other student athletes, other former student athletes, to try to get this message out and change perspectives? Yeah,
I think it's huge, BJ. That's a great point, because I think that's what allowed us to actually make some form of noise and change, was the fact that it wasn't just Georgia having a conversation. It wasn't just Florida having a conversation. There were multiple schools, and it became a national conversation. And I love the fact that a lot of, people like yourselves who are in the news media regarding sports kind of took that baton and made it a point to say, hey, these guys are kind of being taken advantage of in one sense or another. And I was really grateful to see that as things evolved and progressed. And also, I think for me, if you're not on one accord and you're not in like a united front, it's very easy to divide people and cause discord and never get any progress done in the first place. Because to be completely honest, my experience at the University of Georgia was incredible. They really took care of us. I think that they put an emphasis on education and allowing guys to not just be milked for their talent, but actually set them up for progress for the future. I credit that to Mark Richt, the head coach. I credit that to Greg McGarity, who was the AD, Carla Williams, who was an associate AD, who's now at Virginia. Like, they were the reasons why we had an environment that put an emphasis on that. But just because my environment situation was good, my friends who played, at another school across the country or in the SEC as well, didn't have that same experience. And, we just wanted it to be as equal and as equitable as possible.
I mean, Chris, something me and BJ and even Kevin, we talk about a lot is, the least among us mentality. I went to the University of Florida, you went to the University of Georgia. So our experience is going to be very, very similar, even though you played in the, in the mid 2000s and I played in the early 2000s, right? Because the environment is the same. I always believe in, the only way you're going to control the room is by being in the room, right? You got to be in there.
That's right.
You was at the NCPA. You understand what's coming. If you're in college right now, the NCPA, you probably don't know about it. You trying to beat Clemson the first game of the year. How much former players gonna have to be a part of this progress, even if we don't benefit anything besides protecting the current player?
Ben, you hit the nail on the head, man. It has to be a lot of our passion to go alongside those players who are currently involved in it. When I was involved with the NCPA, I was a senior. I was technically already graduated So it was almost like I didn't have to do any of that stuff because I wasn't going to see the fruits of that labor. And I think it takes a little bit of that unselfishness, like you were saying, Ben, for us to kind of take that baton and find ways to use our platform, our education, our knowledge to the benefit of guys who may or may not know better for themselves. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening right now. You're getting more and more, athletes and former players and people in the media who had experiences sharing those stories and saying, this is how it was, and this is how I hope it will become in the futures.
Chris Burnett joining us here, former Georgia offensive lineman, 3-year starter there for the Dogs, 2-time SEC East champion. And again, as we said, Chris, this week in the state of Georgia, name, image, likeness becomes a thing. Is that something that when people hear about it, they think, oh, it's going to be, we talked about this earlier, but a free-for-all, or how many different areas of athletics, and I don't just mean football, but, other athletes and other sports at universities you think are going to ultimately, reap some pretty good benefits of finally being able to do this?
I think a lot of guys will. And I would hope that as it kind of expands, that more and more of these athletes will have that opportunity as well, where it's not just limited to football and basketball, the major revenue generating sports, but that the women who are playing and, doing gymnastics or, softball, equestrian, etc., can just benefit and find extra ways to make ends meet when they're in college, and also not just, have money to splurge, but potentially allow them to set themselves into a better position when their sport is done. Because all of us here know, you're one injury away from your opportunity being done, or you're one circumstance away from your scholarship not being renewed the following year. So if you have that opportunity, I think it's best for people to fully be able to realize and maximize it. And that's not saying that it was a hard life at all. In the late 2000s, playing college football, it was a beautiful gift. It was a blessing from God to even have that opportunity. And I would never complain about it. I have a degree from an incredible school and met some incredible people and great experiences. But I do believe that if some of these rules and the NIL was in place back in 2009, I would probably have a little bit more money in my bank account. And I wouldn't be mad at that at all.
When you think about amateurism in college athletics, we're seeing all this change right now, but for the past generation, there wasn't a ton of change in terms of forward momentum for kind of the evolution of amateurism, and everything else around college athletics in terms of media coverage and money changed. In your mind, kind of what's next? What should amateurism mean for the student athlete?
That's a great question. I don't know if I had an answer to that because it's such a good question, but I would hope that as things evolve, like you said, that it's actually keeping pace with how, the media dollars and the exposure continues to grow. Like you said, it was a major lag. It was honestly probably about a 20 to 30 year lag behind the money that was being generated towards what players were actually benefiting on. So as you saw the TV dollars going up and the coaches' salaries going up and the facilities becoming state of the art, beyond state of the art, you just saw more and more players continuing to kind of struggle on a daily basis. So for me, I feel like amateurism, I would hope I would hope it just doesn't become a feeder to the pro sports, because I do think you lose some of the magic that you get, within college athletics. But if that's what it becomes, that's what it becomes. And, I'm all for players having that ability to kind of self-actualize and find a way to hopefully benefit and provide for their families in the future.
Chris Burnett joining us here on 3 and Out. And Chris, before we let you go, we do have to ask you about 2021, man. I know the Dogs have high expectations. What do you see? Obviously Clemson out of the gate, but what do you see from UGA here 2021?
Yeah, I'm excited about 2021. I feel like I've had the same outlook since about 2007 when I was a recruit, and that it's championship or bust. I feel like there's always the talent in Athens, but not necessarily the execution at all times, myself included. I kind of blame myself in 2012 when we lost to Bama. But I feel like we are always knocking on the door. And I would hope that this year be the year when we don't just knock on the door, we knock it down and walk through that door and finally win a championship for the first time since 1980. I think with the talent that we have, JT Daniels, we have our quarterback. We have a stable of running backs that's better than anybody in the country, which is nothing new. Like, I feel like it's been that way since about 2011. And also we have a solid stable of guys in the trenches. Our defensive line, we didn't get as much pressure as I would have liked last season, but I think that's going to change. And on the O-line, even though we lost guys in the league, I think we have a solid stable of smart, incredibly talented, and way bigger guys than I ever was playing on the line. So I'm excited to see where the Bulldogs go this season. And honestly, if we're not in Atlanta playing in the SEC championship game, it's a failure. But I don't expect anything less than that. And I know Kirby expects the same.
Chris Burnett joining us. Chris, really appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much. Let's do it again soon.
Sounds good. Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Chris Burnett, our guest here on 3 and Out. 3-year starter in the offensive line there for the Georgia Bulldogs, and we've got more to come all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Big time in the ATL this evening. Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Braves and Mets start an important 3-game series as well. But let's start there. BJ, obviously, Trae Young, we talked with home team Brandon Leak earlier today, status unknown. What optimistically are you hoping for out of Trae Young? And depending on where it's at, I guess what opportunity, what chance do you give the Hawks of pulling this out if you get a 60% Trae Young, or he's only really able to go hard for 25, 30 minutes?
I mean, it definitely puts pressure on everybody else, more pressure. And I still think we're waiting, you know. I mean, you can kind of look at some of the reports on social media and maybe have more of a better idea of his potential availability, but we still don't know. I mean, I don't think until 8:30 or whenever this thing tips, we're going to know if Trae's in there, how long he can go, how productive he can be. And I want to highlight this point because I've seen a lot of people on social media ask, well, is he starting? Is he starting? Is he in the lineup? I mean, keep in mind, there's a chance that he is, but he goes out there and tries or gives it his all, and he just can't go more than, you know, a 10 minutes, 15 minutes, who knows, whatever the timetable is. So just because he's in the lineup doesn't mean he's able to play 25, 30 plus minutes. And just because he plays 25, 30 plus minutes doesn't mean he's himself. Doesn't mean he's the Trae Young we all have come to expect to score 35 a night. So there are so many unknowns. And I think, to Ben's point he's made all week, you're going to have to get a big night from, you know, Kevin Huerter, John Collins, Lou Williams, Danilo Gallinari, Bogdanovich if he's healthy, you know, potentially Capella if he can get some putbacks and tips. You're going to have somebody else emerge as a consistent scorer tonight.
I just want Trae to make sure he's being careful, right? Because, like I said, this is about longevity, and I understand that this is a moment that most players won't have in their entire professional career. But I don't want this to be the point of his career that everything changed because he was trying to. You're not this notion of will yourself through it. You got to just play yourself through. If he doesn't feel like he's ready, don't go out there. But if he does go out there, Clint Capella, you know, I mean, Gallinari, Bogdanovich, I mean, Lou Will, Collins, they got to step up. They have to. When I say step up, doesn't mean they're going to win the game. But, you know, if I'm in the National Football League and it's the last game of the season and I get knocked out, then the other tight end gets a lacerated spleen, right? But we got a playoff game next week. So they said, well, Ben, due to the fact that you know your name is Ben, when we talking to you, Bo don't even know where he at. His spleen is gone, and he got hit. So somebody performed surgery on him with shoulder pads and shoulders. I had to go out there next week. But at the same time, I was able to put myself in a situation where I knew I was doing it for the greater good of the team. I never ever got to play in no divisional. In the AFC Championship game. I don't know, because BJ and Kevin, the moment sometimes is bigger than the player, but the player got to understand that you earned this position not to play, but to say no, I can't. And I know that's unusual, but I just.
But then in this case, if he can't, I respect what you're saying, but in this case, if he can't go, you know, that also means that the Hawks probably don't stand much of a chance.
And these decisions aren't supposed to be easy. And when people start saying, "Oh, he didn't do this, he didn't do that," it's not supposed to be easy. But I'm gonna say to Trae, what I'll say to Bogdanovich, what I'll say to Kawhi Leonard if he played, or Kevin Durant, if you went out there, you're healthy. I'm not saying you 100%. You ain't jumped in the fountain of youth. You ain't drunk one of the little nasty smoothies Tom Brady drink. But if you're out there, you're out there. Because think about this. Kevin and BJ, we are very close to the team as far as like injury reporting. If you knew nothing about the Hawks and you're going to see the Hawks play the Bucks and Trae Young is out there, you think Trae Young is healthy. So Trae, if you go out there, unfortunately, we're going to expect you to be what you've always been. That's the thing. They're not going to say, "Oh man, his foot is hurting." What about his shooting? What about his shooting hand? I mean, can he follow through? And if his teammates can step up and be bigger than they've ever been, who knows? You can put some pressure because the last thing they want is that sleeping giant named Drew Holiday to wake up. Because if he wakes up, well, it was a fun run, right? And we've added a second Eastern Conference Finals win since the 60s to add to this long storied tradition of Atlanta Hawks basketball. Because I just think that this is the time for the role players to go out there and show they can do more than just play a role.
But I want to go back to a point Kevin made earlier in the show because we're all offensive. We pay more attention to the offensive stats, right? We love the highlights and the threes and the dunks and all like that. But think about this: if you have a starting backcourt tonight, and we had home team Brandon Leak on earlier, talking about potentially Bogdanovich not being fully healthy. If you have a backcourt of Trae Young, who's not fully healthy, and Bogdanovich, who's not fully healthy, how do you defend a backcourt of Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton that's one of the best in the NBA? How do you defend those guys if your two starters aren't 100%?
I would double Middleton and force Drew Holiday to be something he hasn't been all. Because there's the thing, DJ. I mean, game plans happen no matter what, playoffs or not. Nate, coach, what's the bet? What are we doing? Let's double Middleton and live with the result. What about Giannis? You can't stop him. Like, nobody can stop Giannis, right? Giannis is not going to score enough points to beat you. But you have to make life hard on Giannis, double Middleton, hope that Drew is still, not quite himself. Because I don't want to be talking about the Hawks like they're not in the Eastern. They are in the Eastern Conference Finals. Every other team is watching them. We talk about them like, this is a regular season game, but you have beat them before. And sometimes you got to go back to game one to see what worked and what didn't work. Middleton, foul him, do something. Because, I mean, what 4 threes in a row. Score more points in the fourth quarter than all the Hawks combined. That's scary to me because that shows when he's on his own. But double Middleton, hopefully Drew Holiday, he seemed a little gun shy that he hasn't been shooting the ball well, and make life hard on Giannis and live with the result. Collins and Capella, if at the end of the game y'all got 2 fouls, that's a problem. Use your fouls. I don't know why guys don't use them. Because, BJ, this is a scratch and claw game, and like I say, Kevin, we'll know a lot. Because usually if the Bucks are balling, the game was over at halftime. You saw game 2, it was over. It was done. You're going to have to limit that. You're going to have to do all you can to make it a 4-quarter game.
Yeah, I think obviously it starts with how good and how much Trae Young can go for you tonight and how much he can give you. We'll come back, get you ready for that. Also, the Braves and Mets starting a big 3-game series, and maybe some good news for a change for some Braves fans out there. We'll get to that. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Hawks tonight, game 4. Braves tonight, opening up a 3-gamer against the New York Mets. Important series. Charlie Morton going tonight. You get DeGrom on Thursday, but you don't see Stroman. You really get a break on the starting pitching tonight for the Atlanta Braves. So big one there, but some good possible news. Max Fried set to start tomorrow. No signs of blister problems. And Huascar Ynoa long tossing today at the ballpark, apparently starting his return to try to get back after it for the Braves. So maybe some good news starting pitching-wise where there hadn't been a whole lot of good news for a couple of weeks here in the injury department for the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, you would love to get Ynoa back. And then with Max Fried, you got to have a big stretch from him. When you think about the couple of weeks leading into the All-Star break, the couple of weeks coming out, maybe where you really find out where you're going to be for the stretch run, you got to get some big starts from Max. So good news on those two guys.
Come on, Braves. Come on, Hawks, man. Let's get it done at the same time. That's all I care about tonight, too. Because who knows, Kevin? It hasn't been done yet. Hey, we know that Soroka ain't going to be back for the rest of the year. Maybe, we get a big dub today with Atlanta, both the Hawks and the Braves. And if they do get a double win tonight, I will get Kevin whatever jersey he wants of a Braves player come Christmas. Not you. You can sit back in your chair. You ain't getting nothing else.
I mean, I'm here.
What you want, a Trevor Lawrence jersey or a Tim Tebow?
We'll see if we can get the double dip tonight with the Braves and the Hawks, both in the ATL, both needing a big win. Braves trying to cut that lead in the East down to 3.5 if they can beat the Mets tonight. Of course, the Hawks trying to even up the series at 2 games apiece. The loss tonight, it's 3-1, and you are in a tough way there if you can't get it done here tonight. So big night in the ATL. We'll have all the recap for you tomorrow. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. If you missed any portion of today's show, ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go to our YouTube page and catch all the highlights, podcasted version of 3 and Out. We'll see you tomorrow, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.